Here's Whoopi Goldberg going after Meghan McCain. Okay, Meghan McCain is not she's a Republican. Meghan McCain is certainly not an extreme conservative by any stretch of the imagination. Meghan McCain is a moderate conservative at best. And Whoopi Goldberg is telling Meghan McCain, who's pro-life, to get out of her vagina, which I can safely say most people are very happy to do. Here's Whoopi Goldberg.
If you take my right away from me to judge what I do for my family and my body, I got a little problem with that. You got a problem. You don't want people to take your guns. Well, get out of my behind. Get out of my vagina. Get out.
Okay, no one wants to be there, Whoopi. That's not a thing. And again, this is the idea that Republicans are suddenly going to be doing Handmaid's Tale stuff, that they're interested in putting things up Whoopi Goldberg's vagina in search for babies she cannot have because I assume she's postmenopausal. What? But this is the tenor of the rhetoric that we have now reached. The Democrats, again, they cannot stop with the over-the-top rhetoric about Trump. They just can't help themselves. They have to go over the top on every element. So here's Whoopi Goldberg talking about Donald Trump, and it's not just that she disagrees with what Trump is doing. Donald Trump is now, you guessed it, the Taliban.
We have a leader who has repeatedly demeaned women, right, wants to defund organizations that benefit women, calling on the media to shut up, specifically wants to give preferential treatment based on religion. Are these values really much different than the Taliban's?
I mean...
Yes, they are. It turns out that Donald Trump is not the Taliban. He's not in favor of honor killings. Donald Trump, in fact, it's to stop the Taliban from coming in the country that he's implementing some of these immigration policies. That is the basic idea behind all of this, and I'd be very surprised if in the future his immigration moratorium does not extend to Afghanistan. Okay, the fact is, Donald Trump's entire stated purpose with regard to stopping an influx of immigrants from countries like Yemen and Somalia is because he doesn't want the culture of certain areas of the world infiltrating. What he means by that is radical Islam. It's not a Muslim ban, because radical Islam and Islam are not the same thing. But it is an attempt to fight the infiltration of radical Islam into the West. So no, Donald Trump is not like the Taliban. The idea that Donald Trump is the Taliban because he is, at least in policy, pro-life. The idea that Donald Trump is the Taliban because Donald Trump doesn't want me to pay for your contraceptives. The idea that Donald Trump is the Taliban because Donald Trump is undertaking immigration reform that is in large part moderate. I mean, it really is. Again, of the 10 most populous Muslim countries on earth, 9 of them are still able to send whoever they want to the United States. Citizens from those countries can enter. And there are going to be lots of exceptions to Donald Trump's new immigration policy. The Democrats cannot help themselves. The left they have to portray Donald Trump as Satan more than Satan. And there is something here that I think is kind of fascinating, and that is on both sides of the aisle, there's a tendency to attribute to the other side some sort of masterful genius. So on the left, instead of them just saying, Donald Trump, kind of incompetent, doing some things I don't like, meh, right? Which is, if you're a leftist, that's sort of what you would be saying if you're a relatively rational leftist at this point. Donald Trump is doing things I don't like, but man, he really doesn't even know what he's doing. I mean, this is pretty incompetent. That's what, if I were on the left, that's what I would be saying at this point. But instead of doing that, they have to attribute to Donald Trump's satanic, all-knowing power. Right? Donald Trump is secretly the Taliban. He's secretly Hitler. He secretly has a plan to take over everything and run it. Ooh, right? And on the right, we used to do the same thing with Obama. It wasn't just that Obama was incompetent in the rollout of Obamacare. It was all part of his evil plan, right? Everything that Obama did was all part. It was all part of the plan, right? It was all part of this evil plan. Here's the truth. Most of the people in government suck at their jobs because most people in America suck at their jobs. Most adults suck at everything. Okay, the great lie of being an adult is that other adults know what they're doing. They generally don't. We all sort of muddle through, and then we hope for the best. The same is true in government. Because we attribute this level of mastery to government, we think it matters so much who heads the government, and when someone we like is in charge, we want that person to have more power. Because after all, if he's our side, we think he's the master of the universe, right? So when Donald Trump botched this executive order rollout, he had people saying it's 4D chess. It's 4D chess. No, it's not 4D chess, okay? If it's 4D chess, it's the kind of 4D chess like in Star Wars where you don't play chess with the Wookiee because he gets mad and rips out your arms, right? It's not actually Donald Trump playing four-dimensional chess in time, right? That's not what's going on here. But because there are so many people who have a religious belief that our leaders know what they're doing, they say give them more power, they know what they're doing. It hasn't been true for 100 years. We've muddled through anyway, but it hasn't been true for 100 years. You want to actually have a better country? Stop treating the people in government as though they're experts and know what they're doing all the time with evil plans or good plans, and just say, you know what? Whether they're evil, whether they're good, Let's just cut the power of government totally, and then it won't matter because they're incompetent. It won't matter if they're evil. It won't matter if they're good. They can't do anything. Right? What I would prefer is if we treated Washington, D.C. like it was the DMV and took as much power away as humanly possible. Okay? Everybody is trying to turn Donald Trump into Darth Vader on the left. And on the right, everybody tried to turn Barack Obama into Darth Vader. And I think Obama was in many ways more competent than Trump is at a lot of things. And I think he had more plans than Trump does. I think Trump is pretty ad hoc. But Obama wasn't in charge of things either. It turns out very few people are actually Darth Vader. Very few people are actually capable of being Darth Vader. And so that means that we should actually take power away from them. And if you're really that worried about Darth Vader, by the way, on the left, if you're really that worried about Donald Trump being Darth Vader, how about this? Instead of him running the empire, let's downsize the empire so it's just the Mos Eisley DMV. And then you don't have to worry about it. That'd be the easiest way to fix this problem. As I mentioned, with the temperature on politics so high, the Supreme Court retirement of Anthony Kennedy is raising the temperature even higher. And I encouraged people yesterday to calm down about this. The reason I encourage people to calm down is because it is not the job of the Supreme Court, according to conservatives, to implement their preferred policy prescriptions. The Supreme Court is not going to rule tomorrow that abortion is banned across the land. It was the Supreme Court that ruled that abortion was legal across the land because the leftists on the court decided to use the Supreme Court as a tool of their will instead of a tool of judgment. The same thing was true of same-sex marriage when the Supreme Court decided unilaterally that same-sex marriage was now mandated by a document that was ratified in 1791 and an amendment that was ratified in 1868. Okay, that was the Supreme Court that did that. The way conservatives view the Supreme Court is that it's the job of the Supreme Court to essentially get out of the way when it comes to what states have to do, so long as it is in consonance with the Constitution of the United States. So the Supreme Court is not an activist Supreme Court. When conservatives run it, it strikes down a lot fewer laws generally. It gets involved in national mandates almost never. But the fact is that because the left has used the Supreme Court as a tool for so long, they think that now the right is going to use the Supreme Court as a club. And what they are most worried about, of course, is the overturning of Roe v. Wade. They're under the wild misimpression that if Roe v. Wade is overturned, that immediately makes abortion illegal across the United States. Would that it were so, but it is not. Okay, the reality is that if Roe v. Wade is reversed, as it should be, then what happens is that all of these laws go back to the states. Right? All of these laws go back to the states. And so California will have abortion on demand and Alabama will not. That's the way that this will work. And if you want an abortion, you will simply cross state lines and you'll go get an abortion. That's the high likelihood as to how this thing ends up working out. Federalism ends up prevailing unless there is some sort of constitutional amendment or federal law to bar abortion across the board, which would be hard to pass, I think. But that's not stopping the insane rhetoric coming out of the left. So the left is in full panic mode. I think one of the reasons they're in full panic mode is because, again, I think that they thought that there was going to be a 1,000-year rule by the left. After Obama, they thought they're never losing an election again. So why would we even worry about Donald Trump? And then it turns out not only did they lose the election, they lost the Senate, the House, most state houses, and most governorships. And they turned around and looked around and said, wait, this isn't the America Obama promised. Well, Whoopi Goldberg is leading the charge against overturning Roe v. Wade. The level of insanity in this rhetoric is extraordinarily high. And again, I don't know why any of this is good for the country. But here's Whoopi Goldberg going after Meghan McCain. Okay, Meghan McCain is not she's a Republican. Meghan McCain is certainly not an extreme conservative by any stretch of the imagination. Meghan McCain is a moderate conservative at best. And Whoopi Goldberg is telling Meghan McCain, who's pro-life, to get out of her vagina, which I can safely say most people are very happy to do. Here's Whoopi Goldberg.
If you take my right away from me to judge what I do for my family and my body, I got a little problem with that. You got a problem. You don't want people to take your guns. Well, get out of my behind. Get out of my vagina. Get out.
Okay, no one wants to be there, Whoopi. That's not a thing. And again, this is the idea that Republicans are suddenly going to be doing Handmaid's Tale stuff, that they're interested in putting things up Whoopi Goldberg's vagina in search for babies she cannot have because I assume she's postmenopausal. What? But this is the tenor of the rhetoric that we have now reached.
Let's bring in Ben Shapiro, editor-in-chief of the Daily Wire, syndicated columnist, host of the Ben Shapiro Show. Ben, are you shocked we got to this point?
Not at all. I mean, I think that this has been going on for at least a couple of years here. It started on college campuses, obviously. We've seen it at rallies during the last election cycle. Remember, there was a rally for President Trump in Chicago that was shut down due to tactics like this. I don't find any of this particularly shocking. I guess I'm just shocked by how much of the mainstream left has decided to endorse it. I mean, there have been Democratic leaders who have said that these sort of tactics are unacceptable, but I'm not sure they're not being outflanked by their radical base at this point.
Has this ever happened to you? What happened to all of these individuals? Or Pam Bondi? My gosh, they got up in her face. I know that there have been protesters when you speak at schools, but has anything like that happened when you're out at a restaurant or a movie theater?
No, thank God. This is one of the benefits of keeping kosher. When I go to kosher restaurants, I'm generally pretty popular. So,
what about this? There are a number of major newspapers today, the New York Daily News, the LA Times. They're talking about how this could backfire. LA Times writes, resist too far. Pelosi tries to tamp down progressives' public shaming of Trump officials. And she's not the only one. Chuck Schumer essentially came out and said, hey, stop.
Yeah, and the problem, though, is that you have people like Simone Sanders on CNN yesterday saying that it is a part of white privilege to call for civility, and she's not the only one saying that. You saw John Legend yesterday do the same thing on Twitter, where he suggested that calling people out in public places, destroying their ability to have dinner, standing outside their home, and this is all stuff that should happen if you disagree with the policy enough. And this is why I say I think that Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer may be representing something good on this particular issue, but their base is not particularly interested in what they have to say, or at least large segments of the base.
Hey, Ben, you know what my worry is? My worry is the natural response is to do the same thing back to the other side. And then Republican activists are going to be disturbing other people in other restaurants and at movie theaters and at the park. And then the families are more than likely involved because that's what they do. They find out where you live. I don't want Republicans to mimic this. I mean, isolate these incidents and stop them. I think it's got to be a huge national awareness, not a response.
I totally agree with that. And I think this is one of the big problems that we have in our politics right now is everybody assumes that they're being victimized and therefore their reaction is okay. So I wouldn't be surprised if some folks on the right see this as permission to go do this to folks on the left. I think that a lot of folks on the left see this whole tactic as a response to President Trump being rude at rallies and such. And the problem is once you see yourself as a victim, I mean, psychological studies are pretty clear on this. Once you see yourself as a victim, you're far more likely to see yourself as someone who's capable of victimizing others. It's okay to victimize others because you're just responding. Once you feel like you're responding, it gives you a lot more moral credence to go out and do something bad to somebody else. I think that's what the left is feeling today.
You talked a little